Which is
Mhm.
easier to raise, chickens or ducks? I've been told chickens give you more
Mm.
eggs, but the ducks give you more quality and nutritious eggs. I've also been told that ducks are smarter and cleaner.
Mm.
He's curious to know your opinion. If you had to choose one or the other, why would one choose one over the other?
Sure.
Aside from taste,
Okay.
I love, like, I
Okay.
buy usually at Christmas time we buy half a dozen duck eggs and we just,
Mm.
I mean,
Yeah.
if I could get, yeah, if I could get 2 dozen duck eggs a week, I wouldn't even bother with chickens. But yeah,
Okay.
why would you choose one over the
Yeah.
other?
Yeah. I think, well, okay. So again, I am not a breed specialist.
Yes.
But they're ducks, just like chickens. They're chickens who are meat producers, and you do not want to raise them for eggs. And chickens who are egg producers, like white leghorns, are just crazy great at laying eggs, but then they are also slightly crazy and nervous. So you don't want to, and you don't want to raise them for meat. And then there are breeds that fall in between in the chicken realm. In the duck realm, same thing. So you've got breeds that are great for meat, and you really, there's going to, unless you really want to raise heritage animals and you want to let some of them, raise babies or self-fertilized eggs, that's one thing. But you don't want to raise, you don't want to necessarily buy a bunch of Peking or Muscovy type ducks and raise and think you're going to get eggs. But runner ducks and Khaki Campbells, some of those breeds are pretty good egg producers. And so, you have to think about fit the breed to your need. So again, it's that whole idea of starting with the end in mind when you're trying to think about what you're going to have. Think about your family, what they need, think about where you live, what you're allowed to have, and the kind of mess you want to deal with. I really do like ducks a lot. They are, in my opinion, messier than chickens. Recently we had a bunch of ducks for an experiment that we did on trying to reduce garden snails and
Yes.
slugs
Yeah.
by using ducks. They certainly like garden snails and slugs. But we were not raising them with a huge amount of water available. They have to have water available so they love having water available, don't get me wrong. But we would actually daily let them jump into a pool of water, but we always had water available to them by nipple feeders. And then we just used the same setup we were using for chickens for the feed. And we were using the same kind of bedding in our case, on a concrete floor, and it worked fine. I do think they're messier especially if you try to keep a lot of water available for them, because they do love it. It's good enrichment for them, but they're
Mm.
not. But people tend to think that they require more water than they really require. So those are a couple of observations in general. I am interested in training a working dog who is a gathering breed. And so I really want to have ducks because they gather better than chickens do. Chickens are a little more independent in terms of how they flock. They just don't really want to flock like ducks do. Um, so
Yes.
that's my personal interest, but that's a special need.
Yeah.
So I wish I had a perfect answer for you. But again, it's going to really depend on your situation. Ducks are noisier, I think, in general than
Mm.
chickens. So again, that's another thing you need to think about where you
Can
are.
can
Yeah,
you
go ahead.
can you get I mean, so if we get a chicken that's a layer, you get an egg a day, for a couple of years, 2, 3 years out of a chicken.
Yeah.
Do ducks produce like that? Are they more seasonal? Do they have the same frequency? Can you get a variety of, let's say you've got your optimal chicken that's giving you an egg a day
Hmm.
for 2 years once it's up and running.
Yeah.
Is there an analogous duck that can do that sort of thing? Or are they more seasonal, where they're sort of completely out of production in the winter, and there's no way to force it? Or,
Yeah. You
you
know,
know,
no, I think that probably egg production is more reliable with chickens and possibly a little easier to manage when you are deciding whether to supply supplemental light or not. Um, but I could really be wrong. And I do think that you might want to think about having someone on your show that deals with specific breeds. I think that might be a nice addition to what you have.
Yeah,
So
that's a
I can
good
give
one, yeah.
sort of a general idea, but I'm not up on it completely.
Yeah,
So
it's a good idea. Maybe we're gonna have a
yeah,
duck.
yeah.
People are always telling, especially the type of gardening I do, where I don't till, no-till gardeners, and
Mhm,
there's a lot of people that practice permaculture, which is another type of no-till gardening, and they always
mhm.
saying, "Oh, ducks, 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 they'll eat all your slugs and so on and so forth," right? I mean, they'll also eat
Oh,
some of your plants, right? But
yeah. Yeah. Oh,
but
yeah. Oh, believe me, turkeys, for instance, if you are thinking about, well, I don't like mixing flocks either. So I would say try not to mix your ducks with your chickens or turkeys because they have transmissible disease issues
mm,
that you should be aware of. But turkeys are experts at picking things out of the ground. And I've had wild turkeys go through ornamental gardens that I set up, and they carefully picked out and laid aside all the seedlings and things like that that I had been carefully nursing along. Because they love twiddling with things. And so, yeah, so don't forget the ducks can do that too. We also, in our
uh,
study just recently about ducks eating snails, one of the things we were interested in was when the ducks eat the snails, what happens to the snail? Does it get digested? Is it gone? Do we not have to worry about it after that? And we
yeah,
found that the ducks were just passing them through, and that the duck poop had a lot of snails in it, and the snails
really?
seemed pretty okay. Yeah, so they don't
Oh,
necessarily digest them. They may just physically remove them, but they may or
oh.
may not be digesting them.
Oh,
So
that's
I
interesting. Yeah,
know.
I've noticed that like when I found slugs in my garden,
Mhm,
and I haven't tried this with snails. When I throw the slugs in the goldfish pond, the
mhm,
goldfish don't go at them. Like a lot of
mhm,
things, they'll sort of attack, right? Like you throw a
mhm.
worm in there, and you
Yeah,
watch the goldfish just tear it
yeah,
apart, sort of thing. But
yeah.
the slug
They're
just
not
sinks to the
interested.
bottom.
My chickens will not eat tomato hornworms. Um,
Really?
yeah, they're just like they'll eat anything else. But boy, you throw a hornworm in there, they're like, oh, I don't think so. So
Oh,
some of these creatures, these invertebrate creatures, have protective mechanisms themselves. So bitter taste, or the slime, or something like that,
well, I guess
or it might be a size issue. So
I think a tomato hornworm is basically eating nightshade leaves all day.
yeah,
Probably toxic.
yeah,
You think,
could be.
but like